Uh, I'm not even sure, Nina Makomo, if this thing is live. Also, yeah, I think it's live now. What I'd ask you to do is that I've relaxed my privacy settings, ne? So please feel
Okay.
free to share on your personal Facebooks or host a watch party. As you might know that such platforms, Bafwetu, normally people will watch after, so don't be disturbed by these things of how many people are viewing and how many people are not viewing. I see that the first person has already joined us, in fact, and I would first of all like to thank you, gentlemen, for honoring this invitation. I fully appreciate that you gentlemen are very busy. Respectively, some of you are scholars, some of you just came back from work and still have to make food and so forth. I promise to respect your time. I promise to be very short, comrades. With that being said, I think us gathering here today is just a result of an idea that came to mind, you know. And if there's one good thing out of this COVID-19 period is that we've got a lot of time to think, we've got a lot of time to reflect, and out of those reflections as well, we've got the courage to flirt with some of these ideas. So I'm piloting something here. My thinking was that I've been so much fortunate to interact with so many brilliant young people in the spaces that I've went to, in the spaces that I've occupied, and many a times we have such building conversations, you know, conversations that empower the way I view society, our social problems, and that also influence how I respond to that. So I thought that it is only fair that we share that information, we empower one another with our Facebook community. And I deliberately targeted NW comrades for the specific reason that we are starting, and it was strategic, I guess, for us to target a specific community so that this thing picks up momentum. But nevertheless, I do not see myself doing this for very long. I was engaging with this other boy of mine, Victor. He's a communication student, and I was telling him that use these platforms, comrades, to build yourself. You know, don't wait for the SABC to come and give you platform, but be the people that generate content here, that facilitate these things. I mean, today I've got the very easy task of just facilitating engagement. I know that normally I prefer to be on the other side of the dialogue and sharing my ideas, but unfortunately, it's not going to be the case today. I must say, comrades, that there was a plethora of issues that we would have discussed with now this Black Lives Matter movement resurfacing. There are so many social issues that we could have discussed, you know. So the one that we chose, it's not that it's more important than other issues. Let's not be judged that we prioritize alcohol more than any other thing, but it's something that's been at the center of a lot of debates about our social morality as a country, and at the center of debate generally. Obviously, we can't discuss everything at one go. If we could, we would. Some of us are products of engagement. We believe in the exchange of ideas. So yeah, that's why we came about to choose this specific issue as a response to the fracas that has been going on. There's been a lot of public outcry about the reopening or the reselling of alcohol, rather, with some calling for the permanent scrapping of alcohol, and saying that we are a better society without the consumption of alcohol. And of course, there has been evidence. It has been reported that during this time of COVID-19, when there was no alcohol, there were lesser accidents. For one, your trauma units at hospital were quite empty, you know, compared to what people are used to, and there were no incidents of stabbing and so forth. But also, we cannot ignore, comrades, that alcohol is a huge contributor to our fiscus, you know, and to the sustainability of many families in the township. I know that many of us are products of the township, and we know that at least every township has one family that survives on solely selling alcohol. So I've put together a very interesting panel to just weigh in on this issue. in 4 or 5 minutes, they'll be weighing in 5 or 6 minutes rather, they'll be weighing in on this issue. And then what we'll do is that we'll give everyone on the panel an opportunity to speak. After that, then we'll take questions as they come. I'll facilitate the engagement, of course. Questions and comments as they come, address it to them, and then I'll give them a minute or so to make closing remarks. This is not a debate, comrades. It's just a festival of ideas, a festival of views. It's a platform where we also want to embrace the great young products that the Northwest University has produced that we do not always embrace on such platforms. Some of them, we see them on TV these days. And yeah, they are honestly doing great things. But yeah, it obviously will not always be limited to these comrades. So basically, we are going to explore, or rather look at, the socio-economic implications of reselling alcohol during this COVID period and beyond. What are the social economic implications on our society? And the first person, I think, who's going to open discussions is a very controversial person whom I disagree with almost every time. Neo Mokwane, a staunch liberal Democrat who works in local government, an academic in his own right, and a leader of society, an upcoming political commentator, and I think also someone to watch out for in the coming future in terms of his politics. Neo Mokwane, welcome. Let me just unmute your mic here. Processes are dealing with me. Please unmute your mic from your side.
Okay, no, thank you very much, for that very very kind and very elaborate introduction and of the panel and of myself in particular. Secondly, just to thank you for the opportunity to join in the discussion and to share a few ideas and opinions with colleagues here on the panel. I think at the center of what I am going to...
Ibambe, my friend, I forgot to guide you on what you are discussing. Ne? So now what I really need from you, my brother, is, do you think that permanently banning alcohol in South Africa will fix the social problems that we have? In 5 or 6 minutes, then please express yourself.
Okay. I think what's going to lead my presentation now is centered on the principle of freedom, and as a liberal, of course, this is something that we discuss and talk about all the time. The concept of freedom. What does freedom mean? But let me not beat around the bush and answer your question directly, and then unpack why I believe in this particular position. Banning alcohol in the first instance will not solve any of our social economic issues. In fact, I would argue that it would exacerbate them based on a number of factors. One, the fact that it has been proven time and time again in history that banning something does not necessarily mean eliminate it completely from society. We've seen with a number with regards to, for example, the cigarette ban, where you find that people who open the black market thrives under that particular situation, in that people create their own cigarettes and people create their own products which they sell on the black market, which are necessarily not as regulated as we would like government to have regulated them. So same applies to alcohol. Just because we're going to ban alcohol doesn't mean that South Africans or people in general would stop drinking alcohol. Alcohol will always be available in one way or another. People are capable of creating their own alcohol, be it traditional alcohol or be it through other means, using sanitizers. I've seen a video on Twitter the other day of people mixing yogurt and methylated spirits, which shows that they are very creative, albeit very dangerous ways in which people approach bans, and that they create their own products which they will consume. So that is the one main thing that will drive my argument to say that banning some alcohol in this particular will not necessarily fix all social economic ills. I think the example that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, as you stated, that the trauma units have been empty, it's something that necessarily shouldn't be attributed to the ban on alcohol. It's something that should be attributed to the fact that South Africans were led by their president, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and bought into this idea that as South Africans, we need to hold hands and we need to together ensure that we fight COVID-19 by complying with the rules. All of us bought into that idea initially when the president made the announcement on the 26th of March, I think. And we all stood back and said, we need to give our healthcare system time, and we need to give our government some time to prepare us for a situation that is fast escalating. So South Africans heeded that call to great effect. Even Ipsos made a survey, and an overwhelming number of South Africans supported the lockdown initially because they knew that it is important for us to prepare our healthcare system and to prepare ourselves for a situation that is unsavory, and a situation a similar situation that we've seen in countries like Italy and the United Kingdom. So thirdly, the point that I want to make is that the permanent ban of alcohol in South Africa in particular, and I'm no economist, but you don't need to be an economist to see that if something contributes between 4.4% to 5% to GDP, if you suddenly take that away, you create a vacuum, and that vacuum pulls out jobs, it pulls out economic opportunities, and you find yourself in a situation that is very highly unsavory, in a sense that the economy will be affected largely. You will not only be taking economic opportunities from the elite or wealthy, but you'll be hitting hard the Ospinki in the township who sells alcohol from her garage, or who runs a tavern or shebeen from her house. Those are the type of people as well, those small businesses which create jobs for small or rather semi and unskilled workers. Those people will be the hardest hit. And there are many other reasons, socially, as well as I've stated when I alluded to my first point. Banning alcohol doesn't necessarily eliminate it from the market. People will create their own, and it has been proven that people consume much more dangerous elements without much more dangerous alcohol that is found on the black market, which is not regulated by the South African Bureau of Standards, and they end up drinking something which they do not understand how many volume of alcohol is in it, and so on. So in a nutshell, I believe that banning the alcohol permanently in South Africa will not only have health and safety risks and ramifications, it will also have economic ramifications which South Africa will not be able to recover from. And it will be interesting to hear if there is opposing arguments to this effect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neo, for that. And you raise a very important point that though alcohol was banned for some time, it did not stop people from drinking. I mean, if anything, police officers and soldiers were the ones profiting from this, because they were the ones selling alcohols in the streets, and we were at some point brewing homemade Hunter's Dry. So yeah, you do raise a very important point that a ban does not entirely take something away. Just to thank people who are still joining us. Thank you so much. Fighter Mashudu, I see that you are with us. Nomuhotu who says that there's a lot of females on this panel, which I have to apologize for. It's a boys' hostel, gents. This is not how we normally do things, but this was a last-minute thing, and yeah, I reached out to comrades who I knew that would be able to respond quick. Seixman Mutlo, welcome, my leader. Mutlotsi Litsi Yatsala Tabang, welcome. Without taking any more time, I'd like to give it to our next panelist who has a legal and human rights background. He's currently working as a candidate attorney. He is also a researcher in human rights and constitutional law. I am told that he calls himself a rose that grew from concrete these days. I hope he'll address us on that. But everywhere he goes, we see overwhelming numbers. So, Maposa, I want to know from you specifically that is there any legal or constitutional ground for government to permanently ban alcohol, and taking into consideration, obviously, that there are socio-economic rights, because it's one thing to have opinions, but the unfortunate thing about living in a constitutional democracy is that government does not wake up and impose that we are banning alcohol, because it's good for society. That's a Stalinist way of approaching issues that has no expression or space in a constitutional driven democracy. So in your view, is the legal ground of government to take the decision to ban alcohol permanently? Please unmute your mic. I can't do it on your behalf. Unmute your mic, leader. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, my leader, for the privilege, and I think it's something that we very much needed as the graduates from the Northwest University, saying that these discussions have been unfolding in many platforms, and I know that the institution has produced quite a number of people that are quite capable of also raising their voice. My smolanyana opinion on this, which is mainly going to be informed from a legal perspective or a constitutional basis on, can the government permanently ban alcohol? Firstly, I'm not sure whether alcohol was banned at all to begin with, because what I saw was the ban of selling alcohol, not its consumption, which is why we have seen the rising number of the cases of the people that are brewing alcohol in their own homes. So ultimately, as much as we did not have that flow of alcohol within the formal market, there was nothing that was done to regulate whether alcohol could be consumed at all. So maybe for us to talk about the merits of banning alcohol to begin with, as informed by lockdown, we might necessarily not be addressing something that's emanated from this issue to begin with. But nonetheless, firstly, I think, like you said, this is a constitutional democracy that is grounded on the rule of law. And as much as the government can impose certain decisions on us, any government that leads by the rule of law should always rather lead by the consent of the governed rather than issuing decrees. So in the instance that we now want to ban alcohol based on, usually I think the arguments have always been more from a moral perspective rather than legal issues. Banning alcohol, I will argue that it is not the right way to go now. I'm going to do a comparative study with a country that has attempted to do that previously. Around the 1920s, in 1919, the United States government passed what was called the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, where they banned alcohol for a good 14 years, with the hope that they were going to address some of those issues that we might be facing in society. But what they achieved after those 14 years was a complete opposite of what they'd envisaged in the first instance, because most of the arguments that flow from the ban of alcohol, people want to address mainly the value systems or what people do after they consume. But I then argue today that alcohol does not necessarily change anyone's value system. A person who is abusive by nature, you don't get that behavior from alcohol, but it only comes out in the open after they have consumed all of this. An abuser is an abuser. We don't necessarily need to to use alcohol as a scapegoat in all of this. And again, I've seen a flowing argument that reduction of crime in South Africa is due to the ban which was put on in alcohol. I don't dispute that we have had significant reduction in crime of late. But then if we want to be factual and we do a comparative study with various countries, you'll find that in the world currently there are only 3 other countries other than South Africa that banned alcohol. But in certain countries as well that did not ban alcohol during lockdown, crime is drastically reduced. So the reduction of crime and accidents on the road it can simply be alluded to the absence of people on the roads. There were very few less people that were roaming around. And when there are less people that are roaming around, you are bound to have the alarming crime levels. And even when we talk about the reduction of the hospital activity or trauma units, the same argument goes. Even in the countries where, like the UK, where the alcohol was still in free circulation, we have seen these cases reducing drastically. So I think this is one of it was a conscious decision that was taken by a frightening majority out there that now this is a pandemic is upon us and all of us we need to play a part. For us to address, I think the moral issues that we are facing, which we are now trying to address through the ban of alcohol, I think we need to do what Madiba will call the RDP of the soul. We need to regenerate the moral compass of our societies. There are deeper issues that lead to people turning out the way they are after they consume. The high inequality levels out there, that's where we should start. I think we have to nip it in the bud, because if we're finding ourselves trying to address the alcohol issues in a constitutional democracy that's out to respect the people's rights and beliefs, we are bound to face some resistance that we are not necessarily ready of. Earlier on, you had passed the question to me that whether alcohol is a constitutional right or not to begin with. I wouldn't classify alcohol as a right, but it is a choice that is not prohibited by our constitutional democracy. So the very same, like you having to eat or cooking, you don't find it entrenched in the Constitution. The Constitution won't say that you have the right to cook or eat. But if it does not infringe upon any other right, then it's a choice that is legally permitted. And now the decision then to permanently ban alcohol has no merit whatsoever. Us halting the sales in level 5, we understood that it was for the purposes of flattening the curve or whatever was being said. But on a permanent basis, there is no justification whatsoever on why we want to infringe on the rights of those who seek to indulge in the wise waters. And South Africa generally is, as much as we try to argue that it's unique on its own. If you look at the high inequality levels, the wealth levels, the unemployment and levels of healthcare evident, you will see that we are not far off from other societies. And the alcohol will always continue being drunk. Now I'm summarizing my leader because I know that I might be past the 5 or 6 minutes. As a matter of fact, in our traditional societies, one other thing that characterized what they would call a responsible wife, I'm not even sure if that was the right term to use, will be her ability to bake, brew, and cook. And with the emergence of bakeries, it meant that we had the women in the rural areas not baking on a constant basis. But that does not mean that they'd forgotten how to bake. The same goes to the brewing of alcohol. The brewing of alcohol is a skill that is available and known to our people. It's a skill that can be accessed from the internet. And once we ban alcohol, we're opening up all these all these informal ways. Our people know the skill of how to brew alcohol. I think you have seen the rise of cases of the people that have been using pineapples and yeast and all those sort of things to quench their thirst. Yes, I'm summarizing now, my lead. So now I think if we are really a democratic dispensation that cares about our people, we'll rather advocate for a platform that is going to put their safety and their lives as a matter of paramount importance by having a fully legalized and regulated alcohol environment, rather than giving rise to unregulated businesses by Olio that will then see a vacuum in the market and then exploit the masses of our people by selling a 14 rand back label to people that can't afford at an exorbitant fee of 35 rand. So ultimately, by banning it, I think we'll be exposing our people to more hardships than we can imagine. Thanks.
Thank you so much, my leader, for those valuable contributions. Please mute your mic on your end. I noticed that when you started speaking, I had my mic on, and that might have compromised you a bit, but at some point that issue was fixed. You raise a very important issue that there is no right to drinking alcohol. It's not something that's entrenched in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. So, yeah, and at the same time, I like the point that you make that by banning alcohol, the privileged will continue to drink. Those who afford to drink a six-pack for 250, who do it at Cubana, News Cafe, Rhythm Lounge, what's this other place in Sebokeng? I forgot. They'll continue to do it, but it will hit the poorest harder. Not that alcohol is an important thing that should be consumed by the poor, the rich, but at the end of the day, those who are privileged will continue to engage. Tabankala is making a comment here. He says, I agree with our lawyer. He's making valuable contributions. He's also a legal mind. So he's relating to what you're saying. Welcome, Commissar Hetzuel Baloi. Thank you for joining, my leader. Prince, thank you for joining. Tuli Iswa, Jabu Maluleka, thank you for joining. Mpokhang Khotman Laka, thank you too for joining us. And then Russell Chabalala also comments here. He says, I see gatekeepers of liberals there. But anyway, it's a complex issue that you guys are discussing. Economically, selling of alcohol is great for the tax, employment, and all that, but the issue is the timing is wrong. COVID-19 will spread, he had meant to say spread widely, and with our health facilities, that's bad. That's what Russell is saying. Prince is saying that, do we really have a reduction in crime or a reduction of media presence in crime scenes? Interesting point. Simply because the focus is on the pandemic. Now, do you think that crime is reduced or the focus on crime is reduced? I'm saying this because I suppressed you and I let, I'm directing this to you because I suppressed you and I let Maposa go on for longer. So I don't want to be accused of having an agenda against liberals, of course.
Honestly speaking, I don't think that, I think we need to see from a statistical point of view the crime levels during the COVID-19 lockdown. And we need to make a fair assessment that looks at the lockdown itself, the pandemic, and how and how various people within society have reacted to it. But honestly speaking, from my opinion, I don't think that crime, in a sense, has reduced to a point whereby it has any real significant change to a point where we can start celebrating that South Africa is a safe country. Going into communities, especially here in Cape Town, where you find 6 out of the 10 murder hotspots in South Africa, going into some of these communities, you still have a sense of fear and a sense of caution, because it's still dangerous and crime levels are still high. In fact, lockdown has seen other crimes go in. The looting, for example, of liquor stores after the liquor ban was announced due to the lockdown, a few days after the lockdown started, in fact. A lot of people who had lost their jobs and lost their income, and I'm not saying that this leads people to acts of criminality, but in some instances, you do find people who have no choice and who are desperate, people who are not necessarily criminals entering that particular space in desperation and just to survive. So I think it is unfair to boldly state that crime has reduced drastically because of the lockdown, because eventually the lockdown does need to end, and we cannot bring this back to alcohol, and we cannot bring this back to the lockdown and say that we need this heightened presence of the military and law enforcement authorities within society to ensure that A, crimes remains low, B, that our trauma units remain empty because we have banned alcohol. So I don't think none of these address the real issues. I think it's a quick fix to something. It's a quick fix that will lead to more issues, to something that is very complex. South Africa needs an honest introspection when it comes to the real issues that face us, and we should not try and put a plug on these issues by saying, let's just ban alcohol. And it would not only be unconstitutional, as my colleagues said there on the panel, it will also be problematic from a freedom point of view, because we would be willfully entering a space of authoritarianism. And a lot of people will say that I exaggerate when I say things like this, but it is a slippery slope. It starts with a ban on alcohol, and then it ends up with the government telling you what you can and cannot buy in terms of clothes, which is already happening under the lockdown. You can go to Mr. Price, but you can't buy a short sleeve shirt, but you can buy a long sleeve shirt. So that kind of dictating for me is problematic, because it fundamentally challenges and attacks the principle of freedom, which is what we as South Africans should be putting at the center of our struggle. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that detailed response. I think we are already told not to kiss and to wear masks when we engage in politics of horizontal aerobics, as a younger me would say back in the day. Bethwell is very concerned here about the contents of what's in the glasses that comrades are lifting. Welcome, Bethwell. Sibusiso Shabalala here says that the leader gives a good personal, I'm sure he's referring to Maposa. The leader gives a good personal political opinion and global background to the ban of alcohol. You cannot address the question of the ban on anything from a legal perspective without discussing Section 36, which is the limitation of right clause in the Constitution. I would have appreciated the leader to speak about Section 36. Maposa, please note that down. It's something that I'd like you to address. Hopefully we'll have the honor of Sibusiso Shabalala joining us. He's also a comrade of mine who's a legal mind. Akona says here, just drink responsibly, all of you like me. Oh, just drink responsibly, all of you like me. I'm having my glass of something without violating anyone's rights, and I'm within my I'm with my quarantine partner. So NDZ must just relax. And then Comrade Dikachopule here says, I miss Shembe. You have not missed Shembe. Shembe is yet to come. I'm going to try and reconnect him. Kolis wants to know what Maposa is drinking. Rorisang Faith says that sales of alcohol contribute a lot towards GDP. I feel like people should be allowed to consume alcohol indoors. To go to our next panelist, Nkosi Mthembu, who is a very good friend of mine, a public representative, and his inclusion on this panel was solely based on the fact that I think there's no one who spends more time on the ground and among community members than you, my lead as a community representative, you know, and to avoid turning this into an academic exercise or another exercise of intellectual masturbation, where we discuss concepts for pleasure, but they are isolated from the realities that are happening in societies and communities. I thought that your contributions would really add value. And from your side, is alcohol a problem? From your experience as a public rep, is it a problem that members of our community have? Do they share this view that has been doing Twitter streets, that has been on social media, that alcohol should be banned? And as well, please share some of the negative and positives of alcohol, if there are any, and just tell us what do you think a role of a community leader is in this, in obviously ensuring that society consumes alcohol responsibly. Over to you, my brother.
Thank you very much, Lesego, for the opportunity. Let me start by saying that I do not represent any view of any organization, but these are purely my own personal opinions and what I've observed in our communities. The most important thing that we need to understand is that we are stuck between promoting human rights and protecting human lives. That is the challenge that we are finding ourselves in, because the government believes that by passing certain regulations, they'll be able to protect our fellow brothers and sisters from being hurt, from the car accidents, from all these other issues that the latter speakers have touched on. But yet again, there's another aspect of human rights, because once you start to make decisions on behalf of other people and use one blanket approach, there'll always be a group of people who are challenging whichever decision that was taken. And I think that the latter speakers have covered this issue very well. But Lesego, I think the other issue that arises is that the skewed economic patterns that we have in our country, the inequality has come to catch us in this case. Because look at it this way: I'm having my beer after a long day. It's purely because I had a hectic day. I had errands to do. I had to go to work. I had to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is my form of relaxation. But on the other hand, you'd find that there's an individual that is drinking because there's a stress level that he needs to, in his own mind or in his own personal experience, to reduce. So it is unfair of us to expect the person who does not drink to abuse, or who does not drink to drive, or who does not drink to misbehave, to be to jeopardize or to be excluded from this particular exercise that he loves or she loves of drinking alcohol. So vice versa, because those are the things that I think that when we are speaking about the issue of alcohol and the abuse entirely, to what extent do we say that an individual is abusing alcohol or is having too much to drink? Because if I can maybe drink 24 beers today and I sleep, hey, how did I abuse alcohol, and what is it that I did that maybe would infringe on other people's rights? So those are the issues that we need to actually highlight. But there's a 10-point strategy that was derived or devised by the World Health Organization. And quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. The first one, it was the leadership and awareness commitment. And you asked the same question. To what extent do I tell you what to do in your own home, Lesego? To what extent do I tell you or make you aware of, as a father, what impact you are doing when you are drinking in front of your children? What guarantee do I have that you are the best father in the entire world when you are drunk than when you are sober? So the awareness in a certain way can be limited and can be restricted depending on different households and different consumers of alcohol. The other issue that the latter speakers have touched on, which is very important, the issue of health services response. We know that we are understaffed when it comes to the doctors and nurses in South Africa. And for the mere fact that we are opening up this particular sector of and saying that people must consume alcohol, we know and we are aware that there'll be casualties in this regard. And we know that we will not be able to tackle both, because we had to actually request doctors from Cuba to actually come and assist us. So it meant that we are short-staffed, but still we open up. And in this case, again, it's an issue of those who speak Sotho and Tswana will understand by this virtue. Community action. There's a lot of community action programs that have been established before, your no excuse program and all those things. And one would not sound or want to defend the abuse that is happening in our communities. And we would like to congratulate all these programs that were put in place because they did manage to help. But the truth is that did they truly manage to assist? Because I might be abusive. I'm not making any excuse for these people. I might be abusive because I don't have a job, and that is the issue that I'm facing. And if you cannot provide me with a job, therefore it means that you have not solved the problem that I have. You know, I might be drinking alcohol because I've got nothing to do during the day. I don't have a job. I don't have a business. I don't have any form of support that I'm getting from the government or whichever way. But there's Lesego Mure, who's one person that we know in the community who always buys us beers and we chill with him. So that's my way of actually passing the day. So those are the real issues that our people are facing on the ground. The issue of drink driving policies, I think that we needed to be harsh from the beginning. You know, I know that countries like Sweden, when they catch you drinking and driving, they actually give you a fine, a harsh fine, or they actually take your license for 2 years or so. But in South Africa, you go to the cells and tomorrow you get a bail, and there's a case that we don't even know if El Lagoka. So those are the issues that we should have dealt with a long time ago, and they're catching up with us because here's a national crisis, and all we are worried about is that people will consume alcohol and they'll go to the street and drive. Because of time, let me just rush through the other ones. Marketing of alcohol, pricing policies. I think we've heard a lot about pricing policies for the past few weeks, where the food that they were sold was at a higher price, and obviously that is not permissible. Reducing the negative consequences of drinking and alcohol intoxication. I heard a lot of people saying that we must be responsible drinkers, but the question is that responsible drinkers, if you are irresponsible, then you are forced by something. If you've got something to lose when you become irresponsible, then there's a possibility that you will not be irresponsible. Reducing public health impact of illicit alcohol and informally produced alcohol, monitoring and surveillance. Let me touch on the last one, then I closed. Monitoring and surveillance. Like I've said when I started, I said that we've got a choice whether to protect human rights or to protect lives. And when the government tries to protect lives and add these acts and add this regulation so that our people don't become exposed, that on its own, it's actually hampering on the human right. But if you allow them to actually exercise their human right, it means that you are putting their lives at risk. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mokoni. You know, when you're dealing with a politician, you must just know that hey, it's his way, it's anarchy. My friend went a bit above time here. And I see a revolutionary brother of mine, his son, is complaining that hey, we are on free mode here. This thing might be consuming a lot of data. So we are so strict of time so that we keep it as short as possible, so that even those that couldn't join us are able to come back at a later stage and are able to watch it. Nkosi, Duncan, you raise a very important point there. And I think Fanon and Steve Biko as well make a similar argument that because the quality of our lives as Black people is so low and is so degrading, we are at our happiest when we're consuming alcohol. So you make a valid submission that alcohol on its own or banning alcohol will not solve all our problems, but people end up resorting to the extreme and excessive use of alcohol because of the many other social issues that they have. And if they were not there, if they had more reason to live, I guess, and had more dignity, it's not a problem that we'd be suffering from. Ngoba Khatebe says that I'm sure he's contending the argument of people who say that people should be allowed to drink responsibly, because he says in a society characterized by disobedience, how do they do that? He's posing that question. Clarka, welcome, my sister. Thank you so much for lobbying for us. I see that you've been tagging other young people to come join us. Comrade Moscow Maipe says that I still say alcohol has become the cheapest form of therapy. He's agreeing exactly to what Duncan Nkosi is saying, that people do not choose to excessively consume alcohol, but it's because of circumstances, of course. Like he says, we are here. He's affirming himself. I've got a friend of mine who's Xhosa, George, Commander Monin Tapelo Ngabesh, who was teaching me about the importance of affirmation, especially when you grow up in Makaya, you need to affirm yourself. Moscow makes another argument here. He says, I think the phenomena of Kabula Church and its founding ideology will understand how alcohol and the church have been used, and some may say misused for social cohesion and social distress matters. It also says something for government to open alcohol sales and church at the same time. Okay, he's linking the abusive relationship that people have with church and alcohol. Tebuo Makume here, Mkaya, welcome, says that is there a way in which we can balance these competing interests, human rights, economy, health, and of course protecting our democracy. Maposa, you have not answered any question. Can you please very briefly answer the question of, is there a way, what is to be done? Is there a way that we can balance these interests and find common ground?
No, thanks. Yeah. Thanks very much, my brother. Can you hear me? Okay, right. No, as far as the issue of rights, I think our starting point is I'm going to juxtapose the obligation that is placed on the state with the limitation clause vis-a-vis the various rights that are in conflict in this instance. Firstly, being, if you look at your section 7.2 of the Constitution, it will tell you that the state has a right to promote, protect, respect, and fulfill rights that are contained in the Bill of Rights. And now the argument that comes from the alcohol prohibition is mainly centered on the protection of the right to life. That is your section 11 of the Constitution. But then those of us that are arguing for its continued sale, we mainly base it on your section 22 that's mainly focused on the right to unrestrained trade. Now, when you look at the limitation that is based on section 36, it is one that is informed by reasonableness and whatever, and that decision has to be justifiable in an open and democratic society. So, firstly, to begin with, it is very much possible for us to protect that right to unrestrained trade, that right to the freedom of choice of persons vis-a-vis that right to life. How do we do so? You don't protect the rights of against unrestrained trade or the people that are drinking alcohol by banning it, but rather by putting mechanisms in place that are going to ensure it's free and safe circulation in society. It's something that is not new in South Africa. In 2017, there was a proposed liquor amendment bill that sought to address quite a number of things. That would include how alcohol was to be sold, its zoning, and the various advertisements. On advertisement, in the sense being, if you look at various how alcohol is marketed in general, you find most of these advertisements being linked with class and status without the necessary impacts or implications of drinking alcohol being aired out to the masses out there. But then now, if we have to freely regulate and protect our people, the state now needs to come in and as well have alcohol awareness campaigns, and that we have to have its impact and its life ramifications placed out there to the masses of our people, so that as a more, when you decide to drink alcohol, you fully know what you are getting yourself into. We have to run various awareness campaigns. You protect us in this practice of ours of drinking by making sure that you put mechanisms in place rather than banning it. For instance, we have always, I know it's a far-fetched idea, but I'm still going to make it. Yes, it's now the conclusion. I know it's a very far-fetched example, but I will make it. With the scourge of HIV and AIDS that is spreading in the community, for you to try and advocate against HIV and AIDS, you don't ban sex entirely, but you make sure that you come up with a regulatory framework or mechanisms that are going to make sure that we we advocate for safe sex out there. So the same can happen with alcohol, and it's what the Liquor Amendment Bill seeks to achieve, which surprisingly has taken long enough to come out, because it's something that was proposed in 2017 has been sitting with Parliament for close to 4 years now. So yes, it is possible for these rights to coexist, and them having to coexist does not mean that we now have to eliminate the other. The very same way that we respect other people's religious rights, beliefs, and opinions is more or less the same ways that people have to be respected when they engage in the practice of drinking alcohol.
Thank you, Maposa. I see people are saying here that before you speak or answer, they have to consult with their dictionaries. So I just thought that I'd share that. Commissar Balo here says alcohol will increase social meetings, and many when people are drunk, they fight, while hospitals are not even having enough space to admit these people. Vavenda Tabelo says, Nkosi Duncan, people are actually being arrested, tried, and convicted and sentenced as a result of drunken driving. This has been happening for a very long time. People simply just do not learn. So he's saying that no matter how hard we legislate or stricten legal regulations, people simply do not learn. Manoba here is saying that Neo Mokwane, now this is for you, ne? Bearing in mind that the virus we are faced with is unprecedented, do you think it's proactive and necessary for opposition parties to be overly demanding of one-time perfected system from the government of the day, taking while on the sidelines? In answer, yeah, so basically he's asking that is it justifiable for opposition parties to continue, obviously, doing business as usual when we are living in unusual times? Khoshi here, Mukwena, says that yes, alcohol sales contribute to our economy, GDP, and we can't statistically claim the effect of alcohol in our communities, but growing in our communities, we know very well, I guess, the impact of alcohol. So basically he's saying that there might not be enough empirical evidence to show the negative impacts of alcohol, but growing up in our communities, and I'm assuming he's talking about townships, we have seen the impact of alcohol. With the GDP issue coming so much into question, I'll shortly hand over to another brother, friend. I mean, all these comrades are very close friends of mine. Some call him Shembe, but his name is Bonagni Mahlangu. A scholar, an activist, like all of them are activists, in fact. And I was telling him the other day that we no longer even know what his occupation is, because when the year started, he was working for one of the major banks, and then at some point for the Competition Commission. Before we knew it, he was in local government. So we no longer know what you do, and I will not risk telling lies. He's an economist and a PhD candidate. And from him, really, the contribution that we expect is whether is rather to look into the socio-economic implications of selling alcohol in the country and weighing the economic gains versus the social impact. Over to you, Wena Commander.
No, thank you very much, Ish. And I have flu, so it might be hard to, but I'll try my best. So not to waste time, I will start here, the historic context of alcohol consumption in South Africa in relation to the natives or Black people. You will find these facts in a paper called An Examination of South African Alcohol Policy, which was drafted in 2003. So then it goes as such. You could say, before the colonial disruptions of African people residing where we are residing today, alcohol was only consumed for cultural and religious purposes only. There was no recreational drinking. So now when the Dutch and then the British, which is then the colonial disruption, that is when we were introduced to this thing of social drinking. or what we see now, where you come from work and you are tired and you want to grab one or two to distress. So now that was actually, it's actually a colonial construct. And then later came the alcohol as means of payment for poor laborers, specifically or generally in farms in the Western Cape under the DOP or TOT system. So, and that created a problem because now the people there were so alcohol dependent that most of them became drunkards. So now, and then later, alcohol was used as a means of control for certain population. I'll qualify this as I move on. And then under the British system, alcohol became a serious societal problem that the British prohibited consumption for blacks. And now we know why it became a problem, because it was also used by means of payment and control. And then later on, under the apartheid government, alcohol was used for societal control again. Blacks could only drink in beer halls. Now, even if you move around township, some beer halls that were created by the apartheid regime still stand, or maybe they are used for something else, but we all know what the beer halls were. And then the consumption there was, the supply of alcohol there was protected by the government. And as people consumed the alcohol, the government increased its revenues. And now these are black people. So the government was doing it deliberately, not just to generate revenues from this alcohol consumption, but to ensure that black people do not have the time to go out there and be busy fighting for this freedom. That's why even the youth of 1976, one of their demands was that alcohol must go because of the ills that emanate from alcohol. So now this was just to qualify that. Under the Native Beer Act, traditional beer consumption was only for these beer halls, these government institutions called beer halls. And then alcohol was only freely available amongst the so-called, now the broad-based definition of black, for Indians and Coloureds. Because of the resistance of this Native Beer Act, where people were told where to brew and where to distribute. So now people started then brewing at home and selling to people who they can access from that. And that is what then led to what you call shebeens today, the so-called mampinkis, whatnot. That's the historical context of how we got there in the first place. Those things did not exist amongst black people before the colonial disruption. And then also now to juxtapose or to get into, I think even Leo touched on it earlier about the US. So now in the US, what we find is that it was banned from 1920 to 1933. And then the push for this ban was so-called to heal the nation, because there were issues of public moral and health that were raised by certain interest groups within the American society that then pushed for the alcohol to be prohibited in that state. So then it would give time for the nation to heal. Federal law allowed for private ownership and private consumption. So it wasn't like a total ban. But as well, this then led to criminal gangs that took over the production and supply of alcohol, so-called illicit trade, of which is one thing we are worried about. And it was even said earlier by a speaker that if you ban, obviously it will give rise to illicit trade. But here are the interesting facts. When consumption declined, alcohol-related illnesses also declined in the US. But yes, there was a decline in revenue that came from alcohol through taxes. But then also absenteeism at work declined from 10% to 3%. So that is actually an economic gain, because now we are comparing the economic benefit and the economic cost, and also as well the social and whatnot. Then when we come into the South African context, my facts are all over the place, so you'll forgive me, and maybe I'll deal with questions as they come. Is that according to SAPS stats, driving under the influence in the financial year of 2009 and 2010, 62,904 people were apprehended. In 2018, 2019, 82,912 people were apprehended. Now, we would appreciate the fact that when you apprehend someone, that is time that is consumed. That is actually a cost to the state to actually consume someone. I mean, to actually apprehend someone because of their reckless consumption behavior. We find that 25% of deaths or driving under the influence led to 25% of alcohol-related deaths. Now, to even deal with a dead body, only maybe would appreciate this. You don't just bury someone. Someone does not just die and you are buried in South Africa. There are certain procedures that have to take place, of which is at a cost to an economy. Now, also for the interest of time, when we look into the financial year of 2009, we find that alcohol taxes that were generated by the South African economy equal to 34 billion and 700 million. But then the cost in the same year was 37 billion and 900 million. So there was actually a deficit of 3.2 billion. So it cost the state more than what the state generated from alcohol. So then, we move on. Also, the CSIR found in 2014 that traffic crashes nationwide cost the economy 67.6 billion. Now, you'd appreciate that over half of these crashes that take place on our South African roads are caused or are related to alcohol. So now if it costs the economy then 67.6 billion because of these crashes, and then we had to now calculate that, let's say 50%, take it as it is, were caused by alcohol. Now that's almost 33 and a half or 34 billion that it costs the economy or the government, so-called external costs, because there are also internal costs, which is the cost of you trying to get to assist yourself in whatever you need to assist yourself with, maybe where the government cannot then assist you. Then there's also issues of labor cost, absenteeism in South Africa. Those are work-related injuries that emanate from going to work drunk, and we know it's a problem in South Africa. High employee absenteeism turnover, 29% of school age adolescents misuse alcohol, and that has led to absenteeism and failure, which becomes an economic cost. Because if we, why I say that each and every child that goes to a state school is given what you call a subsidy. Whether you are in grade R up to your PhD, you are subsidized by the state. Now, if 29% maybe of school-going children then either get upset or fail because of alcohol consumption, that is a cost to the state, or that investment is lost to the state. And that means taxpayers have lost money because of that. We see here that alcohol ranks, where did I write that fact? You see now. But alcohol is, okay, yeah. That's with everything of mine is just all over the place. But oh, here. Oh, no, it's not here. But in any case, after HIV and AIDS and other issues, alcohol is the third biggest killer in South Africa. And even those issues are exacerbated by the consumption of alcohol. Because once a person has consumed alcohol and they engage in reckless sexual behavior, it increases the number of people who then would contract HIV and other issues. That's the fact. I do not know what it is. So now, if you look at the economic benefit of alcohol, it's easy to quantify. But if you look at the economic cost of alcohol, over and above the numbers that are provided here, there are bigger numbers that you cannot quantify. And more especially when it comes to your social cost. For instance, if there is trauma that is induced because of alcohol, there is no way you can quantify that in monetary terms. And that might lead to a dysfunctionality of a household, that might lead to a dysfunctionality of a society. So now, even the numbers that I gave here do prove that the economic cost of alcohol far outweighs the economic benefit of alcohol. So if we continuously use this thing of, yeah, alcohol does contribute to the economy, but you must also qualify to say, then what does it take from the economy? And also other issues, like in the alcohol industry alone, we do understand that liquor industry employs 21,300 people directly, and it causes, I think, over 500,000 indirect jobs. Okay, no, thanks.
But nevertheless, thank you so much for those valuable contributions that you're making. You know, I think you're making a point that whatever we think we're gaining economically and its contribution towards GDP is not worth what it's costing us as a society. I'm sorry to police engagement in this fashion. Like I said, that I'm trying to keep it as short as possible so that it also encourages people who come after we've had this engagement to want to watch it. I'll go directly to some of the comments. I see Neo is shaking his head as you speak. I'll, however, give each person a minute to make closing remarks in a while. Akona says, Tabelo says we must normalize such engagements. Akona says, please also note that the liquor industry, manufacturing, operational, and capital expenditure are responsible for an estimated 94 billion, which equates to 4.4% of South Africa's gross domestic product. I know that Matsepo Kamulani is here and she'll correct me, but this might be close to Lesotho's GDP. I think that amount. I know that I'll get the stick for saying that. Tabang Banda says that we love you, comrades, and we will continue drinking. Anna Ditele just says that yeah, now you'll continue drinking. Kasodi Mzwake, I'm sorry, my friend, for abusing your name or surname in this fashion, says that thank you very much, leader, for that historical analysis. Malazi says, Chair, he's calling me to order. Please stop moving around. You're even missing our comments because of that. No, man, the reason is that I forgot to put in the laptop charger, the Wi-Fi charger. It's the first time I'm doing this. Bear with me when I'm I'm not missing your comment or your presence in this discussion. And then there's so much that comrades are saying, but unfortunately, in the interest of time, I will not be able to share all which is being said. I see that Loazi is also saying that well simplified historic analysis, Mahlangu. In essence, comrades, they are appreciating your contributions to this discussion, which is not a debate. We are just putting our ideas out there, and it is to the viewer to take or reject whatever it is being said. With that being said, please, I appeal and I plead with you, can we keep our closing remarks to 1 minute? Please, guys. Duncan, what do you want to say in 1 minute in closing? Duncan Mthembu.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first thing is that you deprived me of putting my academic cap on, because now you asked me to speak about communities, and I hear comrades are speaking academia, but it's fine. Next time we'll come and be academic as well. But the issue here is one, Chair, in terms of the site that you gave me, we need a strong political will and decisive leadership that will understand and do a thorough research in terms of the complications of allowing these things. Because like we see today, a simple 20 that is used to be sold by 20 rands is now 80 rands of cigarettes. So whether we like it or not, whether we ban these particular issues of these particular products or we don't ban them, they'll find their way inside the economy. The illicit trading is something that we are facing in South Africa, and we cannot actually deal with it as it stands. But going forward, I believe that our country needs young people who will be able to realize the impact, both economically, health, as well as the safety of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mkoni. And I do accept that I restricted engagement a bit in that I gave guidelines, just so that we could diversify this engagement and bring on in the different caps that we wear. Because like I said earlier, that I did not want this to be an exercise of intellectual masturbation where we discuss concepts that are alienated from society. So I thus figured that it's important to also bring in your public representative cap into the discussion, and your contributions are much valued. Maposa, I'll give you the opportunity next to conclude. If I'm concluding as a person, you'd be the meme for that, because you always say you're concluding and you keep sharing very valuable contributions. In just a minute, please conclude.
No, in my attempt to conclude, Comrade Liseho, I think the first thing is whatever policy that we derive on alcohol has to be informed by verifiable facts rather than impartial bias. Our people should continue to drink responsibly. Our people should take great care of themselves and support the government and the son of Mahlangu should mute his mic. We should come up with various platforms and mechanisms that are going to support those that might be failing to handle their alcohol very well, but there is no justification whatsoever on why we should deprive our people of such a precious commodity. You'll note when I say that an organization such as Alcoholics Anonymous that has been put in place to assist those that might be failing to handle their alcohol consuming. They do not think that alcohol is the problem, but rather the inability of the people to handle life on its own terms. So rather, what we should do as a country is to come up with moral regeneration programs rather than depriving ourselves of such tax-earning goods such as alcohol. So I, for one, if I was not a lawyer, I think I wouldn't mind being a bartender. I mean, imagine helping people to get a little better in their situations. I think that's a very much rewarding job, and we should definitely drink to that.
I can assure you that you make a far better lawyer than you would have been a bartender in a force. Coming into this, a lot of people were saying that indeed you'll represent the views of those who appreciate alcohol. And I think you've done justice to that. Thank you so much for your valuable contributions. Neo Mokwane, I saw you shaking your head profusely as Mahlangu was making his points without degenerating this into a debate. Can you please just give us a few of your closing remarks?
I think my brother and I, Bonagni, we will discuss on the side some of his views. But at the center of my opinion is freedom, and I think I've said this as a liberal-minded person, is that we need to consider what individuals want. And as I was looking at a few documents earlier, I actually came across a poll that was done by Ipsos, and it was put into the report by the Association for Responsible Alcohol Use, and which was endorsed by the Department of Trade and Industry. The poll, which had an 82% approval from the public, from South Africans, said that they believe that alcohol consumption is a matter of individual judgment and accountability. So 82% of South Africans back in 2011 said this. In fact, what is more interesting is that 90% of government respondents, now this may be officials and politicians, or I don't know how what models they used, also said that they agree with this. So at the center of my argument is that individual freedom is what should triumph over anything else. The people want to decide how to run their lives, what they want to do, when they want to do it. Everything else is subject to debate, and I believe for this current debate is inconsequential. What's important is that people want to drink, and they should drink.
I did give a disclaimer that he's a very staunch supporter of liberal democracy. And one thing I like about Neo is that he doesn't change his views to suit the occasion. He's very principled in the posture that he holds. My brother, I can never thank you enough for your valuable contributions. And Mahlangu, I'll also allow you to conclude in 50 seconds because you've already taken so much of my time.
No, thanks. In the conclusion, if you look into the cost benefit, you'll find that the cost outweighs the benefit. And also, it's easier, I think, to quantify the economic cost or benefit, but it's very hard to quantify the social cost of benefit because of various issues. I would also say that we must allow history also to guide us as to why alcohol is the relationship between alcohol among South Africans, why is the way it is, where does it come from, and how can we then change it, because we would then understand where it came from. A ban will not solve all these societal ills, but it will reduce the societal ills that emanate from alcohol consumption or reckless alcohol consumption. So yeah, in closure, that's basically it.
Thank you so much, Wena Mahlangu. Comrades, I cannot thank you enough for giving me and committing your time to give your very informed and valuable input on this topic. Most importantly, of course, I'd like to also thank the people who took time to join this conversation. And with that being said, I did say that this is a pilot. I see Vavenda saying that such conversations should be normalized, and among other things, Prince is also saying, can you deal with the economic implication? And these are also people who are capable of occupying such platforms, young, very powerful minds who are excelling in their respective spaces. So for us to continue this conversation, I am inviting whoever is watching this. I know that I've got a lot of students on my timeline, and I mentioned that communication students take this platform, run with it. I do not always plan on being in the forefront of this thing. If you can produce content, suggest topics, please feel free to inbox me. And yeah, let's see where this can go. With that being said, Banabe, so thank you so much. I cannot express enough gratitude. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful Thursday afternoon. And if you posa, a good posa Thursday.